Now that Battlebots 2019 is truly over, let's take a look back at those moments that made this season truly fantastic. There were many huge hits, huge shocks, emotional victories. This season had it all. Hence why this video is a top 20, not a top 10. Let's watch more sparks fly once again by taking a look back at the top 20 moments from Battlebots 2019. At number 20 is one I don't think is talked about enough this season, and that's Ribbot silencing the beast that is Endgame. Everyone leading up to this fight, including me, expected this unassuming froggy boy to go up in flames like in its last fight against Kraken, but boy was that not the case, which is a theme throughout this entire video. It got the biggest hit in the match while taking some of its own, and eventually outlasted the Kiwi spinner to get the W, although Endgame at the moment outlasting it's not too hard. It was even greater to see the team's reactions, seeing that they'd taken a semester off just to enter this tournament, and it had finally paid off, making a name for themselves and eventually becoming a competitor that some really hadn't expected to do as well as they did, with such an unassuming weapon being so powerful. At number 19, I could just let this clip speak for itself. When your wife's boyfriend doesn't let you stay up past 9 to play Robot Arena 2, am I right? At number 18, we have what was potentially Son of Waiachi's biggest hit in the entire series against Copperhead. Expectations were high for the big hits during this fight, especially after Poison Arrow, Copperhead's precursor, took out Sal 2 tournaments before, and boy did we get big hits.
Oh, the countdown will devastating. Whoa! Really trying to stay free. Or Son of Waiachi for another hit, and there it is! Oh! There goes a piece of the tire!
But the climax of this fight is what makes this list, with Sal doing what no other robot has done before, getting an Uta with a horizontal spinner. Unless you count Bloodsport, of course. At number 17 is Ragnarok's redemption after the USA vs UK tag team match. Ragnarok was a train wreck throughout this entire season, losing to Monsoon and Valkyrie with one shot. It looked promising against Warhawk before breaking down after a big hit from the spinner. Tim Rackley's old teammate Tom Brewster didn't have much success either with Monsoon, suffering from an insane schedule consisting of Bite Force, Hypershock and Valkyrie, getting decapitated, grinded and launched in the process. However, as two failures came together, we were given an insanely fun fight leading up to the UK getting the win, meaning Ragnarok got his first ever victory. Their reaction is what makes this moment to me. It's no wonder that Monsoon took the Founders Award last year. We had many memorable mini-boss this year, from Burnout, Platypus and especially Warstop, but none came close to the legend that is Timeline. This unusual creation fought with Kronos and showed itself as a perfect nuisance spot against Copperhead, stalling the drum spinner as Kronos got up to speed before delivering a monster KO. It's so stupid to look at, yet it does what it's supposed to do so well, just being pure nuisance. Whoever's idea was to put a giant pole on wheels in the box deserves a promotion. Absolute genius. Number 15 brings me one of my favourite bots of all time, Death Roll, in its fight against another competitor from Oceania, Endgame. Death Roll had came back from an embarrassing loss to Captain Shredderator in Season 2 of ABC Battlebots, but after Great Y's incredible performance at King of Bots, many still had high hopes for this machine. At the start of this fight, however, it looked like Endgame had this fight in the bag, with Death Roll looking like it had just been thrown inside a washing machine, but it only got stronger as the fight progressed. Endgame, on the other hand, was visibly starting to slow down, and one more monster shot left the Kiwi spinner stranded on its back, giving Death Roll the shocking but very impressive victory. This cemented Death Roll as one to watch as it displayed its insane reliability and durableness, that still now is unrivaled to any other competing spinner in the tournament, in my opinion. At number 14 we have another redemption story in Brazil's own Minotaur. There were many improvements to the drum spinner this year, with a brand new, more powerful weapon. After coming so close to victory in 2018, There were many high hopes for Minotaur, but they embarrassed themselves in their first 2 fights as their weapon hardly even span up, allowing Whiplash and Gigabyte to walk straight over them. However, as the Desperado rolled around, Minotaur was forced to enter and showed why it's still the top drum spinner ever built, plowing through Lucky and Endgame. It did lose to Black Dragon in an epic fight, but it still put up a good enough performance against Shatter to get a playoff fight against Cobalt. Minotaur won the fight by the judge's decision, and the pure emotion on Daniel Freitas once his win was announced was enough to make this list. All hope seems lost, but they kept it together and pulled through, improving the machine and got some of the most destructive fights in the entire series in the process. Number 13 brings us to a machine that can only be described as an absolute tank, Blacksmith. Many consider Duck to be the most durable machine ever built. Some say it's Death Roll, but in my opinion, this title goes to Al Kindle's Blacksmith. The selection committee would get always cruel to Blacksmith, giving it fights against machines like Bite Force, Witch Doctor, Minotaur and Soulblaze, but once we saw how it could perform against bots like Kraken and Captain Shredderator, it was enough to earn Blacksmith a playoff fight where it tanked Rotator enough to get into the top 16 for the first time ever. And the fight to make this list is its rematch against Witch Doctor. Blacksmith hardly ever hit the ground during this fight, with the Voodoo Queen completely in control, but Blacksmith, like the tank that it is, held it all together. Even when smoking, Al Kindle could still ask, "Is that all you got?" while his machine gets slowly destroyed, painfully and slowly. It cemented both bots as legends, and is why it makes this list for this iconic moment in the series. It really is what Al Kindle and Blacksmith are all about. Pure chaos. Speaking of legends, you can't get any more legendary than our bot at number 12, Bite Force. The reigning champion hardly ever broke a sweat throughout this entire series, so it definitely deserves a shout out whether you like it or not. Yeti, Bronco, Hypershock, Monsoon, Uppercut, Lockjaw and even Tombstone were just tossed away as middle tier competitors, as only one came through unscratched. And you can be sure that will be Paul Ventimiglia and Bite Force. It looked like it had made its match against Witch Doctor, as one by one its wedgelets were launched into the ceiling, but the king of kinetic energy proved why it's got 2 giant nuts. And 4 massive hits left the champion of Battlebots once again, since the year before and 2015. Even if you are salty that the result was anticlimactic and it's just the same result as last time, and this bot just never loses, so you have to admit, it's a legendary machine that deserves its place in history just for its undefeated streak that continued all throughout this series. Once it does lose, trust me, it will be huge. And number 11, we've got Gigabyte's job interview for Area 51. Witch Doctor for me was always an overrated bot throughout the 3 series it competed before this one. Its only noteworthy victory was against Rotator in a quick knockout, and was most famous for almost defeating Tombstone, but even after that, it never really impressed me a lot. But improvements, and I mean improvements, were made during this fight, and Witch Doctor entered the bots as a new kind of monster. Just look how many times Gigabyte went airborne in this fight. Our first fight in our top 10 is the return of a legend, and this legend came in the form of a gardening tool, the rake. Hypershock taking out Warrior Clan's drone in Season 2 is one of the most replayed clips in the show's history, and many, including me, wanted a return, and we finally got that in Hypershock's playoff match against Huge. Will Bales promised chaos, and boy did we get chaos. And even better, he brought us 2 rakes. Unfortunately, this can't be any higher up than this due to the fact that the rakes betrayed him and arguably lost Hypershock the fight since one got caught up in the weapon, not allowing it to spin up before Huge discombobulated it. Even if Hypershock didn't win, it was sure a win for all the fans, and seeing Will Bales' reaction after the fight, he thinks so too. My number 10 was full of fun. Number 9 brings us to a moment that made a lot of people sad, and a lot of people shocked as well. There were always a big 3 throughout Battlebots: Tombstone, Bite Force, and Bronco. All were consistently destructive and fun to watch, up until Season 4. Bite Force and Tombstone were still riding high, but for Bronco it was a different story. They understandably lost to Bite Force, and many expected it to bounce back like it usually would. But then, as it fought free shipping, disaster struck.
To avoid these attacks. Oh,
Bronco's Toro cosplay left it weaponless in one of the most shocking and replayed moments in Battlebots history, and it can only be summed up by one thing that Reason said during the fight. As Team Inertia Labs hopefully continue to compete into the future, they sure aren't going to forget this moment in the future, and neither are Battlebots. With the abundance of a good flipper, the sport needed a new star to take over the fallen All-Star, and so it did as Hydra entered the battle box for the first time. Team Archie had hyped up the machine so much that it was already considered a potential champion before it was built yet. It proved that the hype was legit after facing off against Warhawk. It made up for the lack of Ice Wave at the tournament, splitting Warhawk into not 2 but 3 pieces and sending Warstop for a ride as well. This flip single-handedly cemented Hydra as an all-star, and bot builders began taking notes on how to build this new insane monster of a machine. Number 7 brings us to another robot that came onto the scene for the first time, fresh from the UK, Cobalt. This green and black vertical spinner had the high hopes riding for it after its Chinese counterpart Tungsten took home the TIFR Championship the year before. It put on a great showing against Sub-Zero, but it's the fight with Duck that showed how insane this spinner could be. This fight was already impressive as it was, but the most memorable moment, apart from you know what, after it did this to the poor Duck.
Other than Hal Ruckers. Oh! Just flung off his beak, Chris! His beak is out of the rails!
Not even Tombstone came close. Not Yeti, not Lockjaw, not Gigabyte, but Cobalt managed to do this with one single hit. It pulled it off with such ease as well, tossing it right out of the arena. Duck did pull through, which is even more impressive, and won the fight in an even more memorable moment. But I'd put the wedge getting ripped off over it since it kind of ruined the end of a classic fight. At number 6, we return to Witch Doctor. I mean, it is my favourite robot after all. The name suggests that the bot is powered by some sort of voodoo magic, and after seeing our number 6 pick, it's believable. Witch Doctor throughout the series did have a problem with this weapon as it smoked up as it started to get the upper hand of the fight, but in 2 especially, it showed how much this robot could keep on ticking despite a bad situation. It had been down for the count twice in the series, and 2 times out of 2, it came back to life out of nowhere, which can only be described as pure Mike Galele magic.
What a turn of events here. Witch Doctor doing everything possible to move here and start the move. It's moving. It's moving. The countdown stopped momentarily, but Witch Doctor has to keep moving.
Leaving them and the opponent stunned. Even engulfed in flames, the machine wouldn't stop, and hearing Chris and Kenny lose their minds was incredible too. Everyone was losing their minds at the moment at this point, especially Steve Martin from the Death Roll team. You've got to feel bad for him though, he was so close to a championship and then just for this to happen, and then he lost the judge's decision. It's a hard life for the Australians. The first in our top 5 is a return to the UK Ripper Cobalt. It finished its regular series with a 2-2 record, and it earned a playoff fight against Minotaur. Both machines are known for being 2 of the most destructive around, so fans knew the result would be explosive, and boy they were.
Begin! Oh, my gosh! Wow! Minotaur! They end up at opposite ends of the battle box!
And that wasn't even it. We had Gigabyte getting launched, Bronco going airborne, Petunia taking flight, but none had a patch on what is the biggest hit in perhaps the show's history. At number 4, we look at an unusual looking machine in Mammoth. This lumbering beast towered above even the biggest machines like Nightmare and Huge, at the cost of not much armour at all. They put on a great display at Robot Ruckus, but many were hesitant to be hopeful for this machine in such a spinner heavy field. But with its first fight against Zax Backwards, everybody wanted to see the legendary Yeet.
Ricky Willems getting it done with just one hand here.
Unfortunately, this was the only Yeet we got, but it was sure worth it. Eat that Hydra. Number 3 isn't really a moment, it's more of a machine itself, since there wasn't a dull moment when it was around. You thought Mammoth looked insane, but you haven't seen this in level of insane. That bot is the insanity that is Deep Six. Many wondered what would happen if Tombstone was a vertical spinner, and now we know. It began by doing this. We had to wait until the Desperado to see it in a fight against Axe Backwards, where it did this.
Axe Backwards wants some more. It got split.
It followed this up with a fight against the poor old elephant, Nelly the Ellibot, and did this.
Get out of the way, Nelly the Ellibot! No, what are you doing? Get out of the wall! Jump!
Deep Six just shouldn't have worked, but it did, just like its middleweight counterpart. It hit two of the most entertaining knockouts ever, and fans will not forget this monster anytime soon, even if it isn't the most competitive. Our penultimate moment from the series on this list isn't even from a fight, it's the culmination of several across 3 series. If there's one person in the sport who could never catch a break, not including Craig Danby, it's Will Bales. His machine almost took out the champ before flaming out in Season 1. It flamed out again against Poison Arrow in Season 2. Its only win in Season 3 was against a cheeseburger, and it was starting to become more of a meme than a competitive bot. But Will Bales just didn't give up and put all the effort he had into a brand new Hypershock, and what a first impression it made. After finally putting on the performance fans have been waiting for in the greatest box rush ever, we were given this wholesome moment in the pits.
You know, you do this after work.
Yeah.
You do it instead of going hanging out with friends. You do it instead of family. You do it instead of going on vacations.
Yeah.
And you do it. You spend all your money. You spend all your friends' money. You go out and find some other people's money. You spend that. Thanks to all our sponsors. But it's all because we're obsessed with doing all this stuff. You get here and you slave away up until the very last moment, and then it finally, just for a glimpse, pays off.
For 3 minutes.
And now we're gonna go break it again. So it's all part of the fun.
We're happy for you.
Thanks.
Congrats.
At this point, so many fell in love with Hypershock, and Will Bales finally got the win he deserved. It just shows there's so much more to robot combat than just robots destroying each other in the arena. There's people controlling these machines, and they have emotions too. And this, and many other Jenny Taft segments, showed how much heart these people really have, and it was truly wholesome. And now we come to our number 1 pick. There have been shocks and upsets in Battlebots in the past. Red Devil beating Witch Doctor, Free Shipping defeating Bronco, Death Roll defeating Endgame, but none come close to the anarchy of this.
Oh, that's a big hit. You always have to watch the kinetic energy. Oh, whoa, that's what I'm talking about. Rotator's wedge doing some amazing work there. Holy smokes, but look at Ray Billings' bot. It's like, yeah. Did anybody else feel that? Because I didn't. Well, Tombstone doesn't want to attack that front wedge anymore. Tombstone's on that wheel that you talked about. Rotator a little wobbly too, Chris.
When Tombstone met Rotator in episode 7, the results were explosive to say the least. None expected Rotator to become the perfect counter for Ray Billings' killing machine, since nobody really knew how they were supposed to beat this thing, apart from sticking a vertical spinner on the top of your machine, like Bombshell did. And we were given the most spectacular hits in the series before we were met with an unusual sight with both weapons destroyed. It wasn't looking good for Rotator, but suddenly we were met with a truly shocking sight as Tombstone's damage became apparent as flames began to rise from the chassis.
There is a fire going on in Tombstone, and there's more than half of the match left. Whoa! That is a big-time fire. That's not a big lighter there. That's like a legit, turn on the fireplace fire in December in Milwaukee.
And as once the Reaper gave in, there was so much hype in the room, it was hard to believe.
Trying to bully Tombstone around the box, or at least into the screws. Tombstone isn't having it. It is not moving right now. It's not moving. Will the countdown start? Let's see.
You gotta show me you got some kind of movement.
Ray has to show. Oh, it's going to be so close. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. That was unbelievable.
This bot went from getting KO'd by Witch Doctor in 6 seconds to this. Fans everywhere went insane after this fight, which is surely enough to make it my number 1 pick. Thanks for watching this compilation of Battlebots moments. I will be making more in the future, so comment down below if you want to see me make any more, and yeah, hope you enjoyed.